The phone buzzed in my hand, the screen flashing with a message I never thought I'd see. Tiffany had posted it, her words accusing me of losing my mind, of being unfit to make decisions. The weight of her betrayal hit harder than anything before, and I felt the sharp sting of her words cut through me. How could she do this? My own family, turning on me like this, trying to make me seem crazy. I stood there, staring at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands trembling. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with everything, you know the crushing feeling that follows. Subscribe if you've ever had to fight for your own truth, and leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from. That was the moment everything started to unravel. I never thought it would come to this. The farm, the land Joe and I worked so hard to build, was finally gone. I'd signed the papers just this morning, and already I felt the weight of the decision pressing on me. But it wasn't the sale that hurt. It was the way my son and daughter-in-law reacted. Derek and Tiffany. I never expected them to turn on me like this. It wasn't about the money for me. No, this was my life's work. The farm where I raised my children, where I lost my husband to cancer, where I fought through droughts and tough times. But when Derek stormed in, his face red with anger, demanding answers, I knew something had changed. This was no longer just about property. This was about control. And Tiffany, the way she looked at me, full of judgment, I could see the words forming in her head even before she opened her mouth. My own family, accusing me of betraying them, of selling our heritage for what peace of mind. I could barely hold back the tears, but I wasn't about to show them that. I had hoped they'd understand. But as Derek and Tiffany fumed, it became clear. They didn't care about the years I'd spent nurturing this place. They cared only about what they stood to lose. The betrayal stung, and I could feel the injustice settle deep in my chest. I spent 45 years of my life on that farm, working the land Joe and I bought with our own hands. I remember the long days, the sweat, the endless challenges, but also the joy of watching our crops grow, the satisfaction of a hard day's work. Joe, God rest his soul, always said this land would outlast us, that it would be a legacy for our children. We dreamed of passing it down, the way it had been passed to us. But life doesn't always follow the plan we set. When Joe passed away, the farm became more than just a place. It became a part of me, a piece of our life that I couldn't let go. But it wasn't the same after he was gone. The land, the animals, the work. It all started to feel heavier, like a weight I couldn't bear alone. I thought about selling for years, but never found the right time. And then, 3 weeks ago, I finally made the decision. I sold it. Derek, my son, never understood why the farm meant so much to me. He left for college, got his degree, and settled into a job in insurance. I could never get him to care about the land, the way Joe and I did. And Tiffany, well, Tiffany was never really interested at all. She'd always complained about the smell of the cows and the dust from the fields. They lived in their perfect little world, full of shopping sprees and expensive vacations, a world that felt far removed from the life we had on the farm. I knew this was going to upset them, but I had no choice. The farm was more than just a piece of land. It was a reminder of a life that I could no longer hold on to. It was time to let go, even though the decision tore me apart. But when Derek and Tiffany found out, it was as though they saw me as nothing more than a cash machine. They didn't understand. To them, it was just a sale, a financial transaction. To me, it was the end of a chapter, the closing of a door on a life I had poured everything into. I thought I was ready for what was coming, but I had no idea how angry they'd be, how much they'd make me feel like I'd betrayed them. The confrontation was inevitable, and when it came, I knew I had to stand my ground. When Derek walked into the kitchen, I could feel the air change. His face was flushed, his eyes narrowed, and his fists clenched at his sides. Tiffany stood behind him, her expression already set in that way I knew too well, a mix of concern and judgment. They were angry. No, furious. But it wasn't just anger. There was something else there, something darker. I had hoped they would understand. I had hoped they would see that the decision to sell the farm wasn't just about the money. It was about letting go, about finally making the choice that had been eating at me for years. But as Derek opened his mouth, all I heard was entitlement. "Mom, why didn't you tell us this land belongs to the family? It's our heritage," he snapped, his voice rising. I stood there, my heart sinking with each word. The farm wasn't just land to me. It was everything Joe and I had worked for, everything we had built together. But to Derek and Tiffany, it was nothing but a resource that they felt entitled to, their lives, their luxuries, their debts. It was all wrapped up in what I had just given away. They were angry not because they cared for the farm, but because they felt betrayed, as if I had taken something from them. Tiffany's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You're being selfish. You don't even care about what we need. We've been planning for that money," she hissed, the words dripping with accusation. Her face was twisted with frustration, and for a moment, I saw the truth in her eyes. This wasn't about family. This wasn't about legacy. It was about money, about their plans, their desperate need to cover their own mistakes. I wanted to argue, to make them understand, but I couldn't. I couldn't make them see what was so clear to me. Derek's face twisted as he tried to explain his frustration, but all I could hear was greed. He wasn't talking about the farm. He was talking about his own obligations, his own mistakes. The farm had never been his to control, but he thought it should be. I felt the frustration bubble up in me, but something else too, a quiet resolve. They had crossed a line, and in that moment, I realized the truth. This wasn't about the farm. This was about control, and they had tried to manipulate me into giving them what they wanted. I couldn't let that happen. "I made this decision, Derek," I said, my voice calm but firm. "The farm is gone. The money is mine. You can't change that." My heart was heavy, but I wasn't backing down. As Derek stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I stood there, feeling something shift inside me. This was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The tension in the room was unbearable. Derek's voice had shifted from anger to something colder, something more dangerous. "You don't get it, Mom," he said, his tone sharp. "This isn't just about the farm. This is about our future. You've ruined everything." His hands were trembling, but not with fear. No, this was something else, something darker. Tiffany stood beside him, her arms crossed, eyes full of accusation. I couldn't understand. My own son, the boy I raised, the one who used to run through the fields with me, was now looking at me as if I were the enemy. This wasn't the boy I remembered. This was a man. No, a stranger, speaking to me like I owed him something. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Tiffany's voice broke through my thoughts. "You're being selfish," she spat. "That farm was supposed to help us. We've already committed to things based on that money." My heart sank. I had hoped that maybe, just maybe, they'd understand. But no. They were not angry because of the farm, or because of our history, or because I was old and needed to downsize. They were angry because they saw the farm as a source of financial salvation. I had sold the farm, and it was as if I had taken away their last hope. Then Derek dropped the bombshell. "We've got debts," he said, his voice low. "Big ones. More than I can handle. That money was supposed to fix everything. You don't understand how bad it is. Mom." The words hit me like a slap. His desperation, his pride. They were tangled up in a mess of bad decisions. "Gambling debts," he muttered under his breath, as if he was ashamed. But I heard him. My own son was so deep in debt that he was willing to threaten me. He had already lost his grip on everything, and now he was looking to me to bail him out. I could feel the anger rising, but there was something else too. A strange, unshakable clarity. I wasn't just dealing with a family dispute. This was manipulation. This was greed. And it was ugly. I stood there, my hands shaking, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was determination. I could feel it building inside me, like a fire that had been smoldering for years. I had let them take so much from me already. No more. "I won't let you bully me into this, Derek," I said, my voice firm. "You made your choices, and I'm not going to be your scapegoat. You're on your own now." The silence that followed felt like a weight pressing down on me. Derek didn't speak. Tiffany didn't move. I had drawn a line in the sand, and for the first time in years, I felt like I might actually be able to defend myself. I wasn't going to let them win. This fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It started as a normal morning, but when I checked my phone, everything changed. There it was. A post from Tiffany, shared across the community page. At first, I thought it was just another of her self-righteous messages, but then I read it. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Hi, everyone. I'm really concerned about my mother-in-law, Margaret Caldwell. She's been making some very strange financial decisions lately, and the family is worried about her mental health. She recently sold the family farm without consulting anyone, and she's been acting paranoid and hostile when we tried to discuss it. If anyone has any recommendations for senior services or knows of any resources for families dealing with elderly loved ones who might need help with decision-making, please let me know. We just want what's best for her." The words were carefully chosen, designed to paint me as unstable, as if I had lost touch with reality, as if I couldn't make decisions for myself. My heart sank as I read it over and over, each line sinking deeper into me. It wasn't just about the money anymore. This wasn't about the farm, or their disappointment in my decision. No, this was an attack on me, on my dignity, on everything I had worked for my whole life. I had spent decades building that farm, working harder than anyone ever gave me credit for. Joe and I had built a life from scratch, from nothing. And now, Derek and Tiffany were trying to twist it into something else, something ugly. I felt the sting of betrayal, deep and cutting, as I stared at the screen. I had never imagined they could do this to me, not in a million years. But here it was, out in the open for everyone to see. I couldn't just sit back and take it. They were going to ruin my reputation, turn my own community against me, all to get what they wanted. I wasn't going to let them. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I typed my response. Hi everyone, this is Margaret Caldwell. I appreciate Tiffany's concern about my mental state, but I assure you, I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. The decision to sell the farm was mine, and mine alone. I'm not incompetent, and I'm certainly not paranoid. I have all the documentation you need to verify my mental health. Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine. Anyone who has any doubts is welcome to contact my doctor. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. I wasn't just defending myself. I was taking back control. I knew this was just the beginning, but I was ready. If they wanted a fight, they'd get one. I wasn't going to let them tear me down. Not without a fight. I stood there, phone in hand, staring at Tiffany's post. The words blurred for a moment as the weight of them hit me. Strange financial decisions. Paranoid and hostile. My own daughter-in-law, turning the world against me with a few keystrokes. I read the post again. She was painting me as a woman who couldn't make decisions, who wasn't in control of her own life. The betrayal was almost too much to bear. It wasn't just that they were trying to take what was mine. It was that they were trying to destroy my character, my very dignity. How could they do this to me after everything, after all the years of hard work, all the sacrifices Joe and I had made to build that farm? I could still hear his voice in my head, the two of us laughing as we sat on the porch, dreaming of the future. We had built a life, and now Derek and Tiffany were trying to take it all from me. Not just financially, but emotionally. I felt anger rising in me, sharp and clear. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who I was, and I wasn't going to let them take that away. I had worked my whole life to make something of myself. Joe and I had weathered storms, literal and figurative, together. We'd built that farm from nothing. I had every right to decide what to do with it. It wasn't theirs to take, no matter how much they felt entitled to it. I wasn't a victim in this, and I wouldn't let them turn me into one. Sitting down at my kitchen table, I pulled up the post and wrote my response. I appreciate Tiffany's concern, but I am in full possession of my faculties. I am competent, and I have every right to sell my farm. I will not stand by and let my decisions be questioned. I hit send, feeling a rush of something I hadn't felt in a long time. It was empowerment, raw and real. This fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. I wasn't going to sit back and let them manipulate me anymore. I had worked too hard for too long to let them tear me down. I was ready. I had to be. The battle ahead was going to be tough. But I wasn't going to lose. Not this time. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Derek stood, his lawyer at his side, presenting his case with that same smugness he had shown when he first barged into my kitchen. I could feel the weight of his words, each one like a needle aimed at my dignity, at everything I had worked for. He painted me as a woman who had lost her mind, a person unable to make clear decisions, someone who had been manipulated by the money from the sale. His voice was full of entitlement, as though he believed his lies would be enough to tear me down. And for a moment, I felt the sting of betrayal all over again, a sharp reminder of how far he had fallen from the son I had raised. But I was no longer the woman who had let him walk all over her. I was stronger now, and I could feel my lawyer preparing to strike. With a quiet confidence, she stood up, calmly addressing the court. "Your Honor," she began, "I'd like to address the core of Mr. Caldwell's accusations." Her voice rang clear, cutting through the tension. "Mr. Caldwell claims that Mrs. Caldwell's decision to sell the family farm was hasty, that she was incapable of making such an important choice. But let's examine the facts. Piece by piece, she tore apart Derek's case. She exposed his financial desperation, the debts he had buried in secrecy, the gambling habits that had driven him to prey on his own mother. With each revelation, Derek's face grew paler, his once confident stance faltering. The manipulation was clear for everyone to see. His claims that I was mentally unfit crumbled under the weight of truth. I sat there, watching it all unfold. The anger I had carried for so long began to dissolve into something else, something deeper, more empowering. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for. The moment my truth would finally be heard. When the judge's gavel fell, it felt like a weight lifting off my chest. "Case dismissed," the judge declared, his voice firm. Derek's case, his lies, his manipulation, they were all exposed for what they were, and I had won. I took a deep breath, my heart still pounding. But this victory, it wasn't just legal, it was personal. I had reclaimed my dignity. I had stood my ground. And for the first time in a long while, I felt truly free. As I stood to leave the courtroom, I couldn't help but smile. This battle was over, and I had come out on top. I never imagined I'd be sitting here today, reflecting on everything I've been through. There was a time when the weight of betrayal, the lies, and the manipulation felt like it would swallow me whole. I couldn't understand how the people I had trusted most, the ones I had given everything for, could turn on me so easily. But now, as I sit here, with the past behind me, I realize that everything I endured has shaped me into the woman I am today. The court victory was more than just a legal battle. It was a reclaiming of my dignity, of my independence. I had spent so many years living for others, my husband, my son, the farm, but I'd lost sight of my own worth along the way. Now, I see it clearly. I see that my strength isn't just in the land I worked or the people I raised. It's in the quiet moments, the ones when I stood up for myself, when I refused to let their manipulation control my future. I've learned to trust myself again. I've learned that no one has the right to take away my peace, my choices, or my voice. The hardest part wasn't fighting back. It was realizing I had the right to fight in the first place. I've gained a new sense of freedom, the kind that doesn't come from material wealth or the approval of others. It comes from within. The future is mine to shape now. I'm not bound by anyone else's expectations or manipulations. I've carved out a new path, one where I'm the one in control, and that's something no one can take away from me. As I look ahead, I feel a sense of peace. A new beginning is here, and for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to live it. I've learned to protect myself, to stand firm, and to move forward with my head held high. If there's one thing I know now, it's that my story doesn't end with this victory. It's only just begun. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've faced a struggle of your own, I'd love to hear your story. Share your thoughts, your reflections. I read every one.